Good morning from Montrose Old and St Andrew's Church, and welcome to our short thought for the day. There might be the odd exception, but almost all of us will have lost our tempers probably many times over. Frustration, feeling aggrieved, lack of sleep, being under pressure, these and other factors probably contributed to our outbursts. However, while they may have contributed to why we lost our temper, they don't altogether excuse it. And while anger can help us let off steam, we all know that it isn't the best method for dealing with our problems. It often leads to further difficulties, can spoil relations and deepen any differences. At the time it might seem as though we've no choice, but oh, how often do we regret our outbursts immediately afterwards and wish that we could turn the clock back. If anger is seen as unhelpful and counterproductive, what do we make of Jesus' outburst in the temple? He was furious. The holy temple meant for worship had been taken over as a marketplace. Money changers were ripping people off as they bought the special temple money. Profit and exploitation instead of the glory of God. Calling it righteous anger is not a get out, though it was righteous. Jesus wasn't demanding his own rights. It wasn't out of pique, it wasn't for selfish ends. Indeed, if anything, it would make life more difficult for himself. But it was to facilitate true worship for ordinary folk and ultimately for God's glory. There would be repercussions for him, perhaps bringing his death that bit closer. We can feel something of righteous anger when we learn, say, of the abuse of a young child and demand justice. But even there, I suspect there's too many mixed emotions, and often we turn a blind eye to our own feelings more generally. Here we have a well thought out stance by Jesus. Yes, showing his anger at the injustices being perpetrated on the vulnerable, and a clear affront to God from the religious leaders who should have been leading true worship. Rarely will anger be prompted by such pure motives. Often our anger stems from frustration, or because our self-interest has been affected, our nose put out of joint. In these days of tension and frustration, we need to be alert to the dangers of losing our temper and the harm it can cause. Jesus' outburst in the temple was for good reason. It showed that while he could be meek, he was not weak, and that there were issues that he couldn't ignore. But it was the exception. For the most part, and on this we should follow his lead, he was ready to work with people, regardless of their flaws and failings, to listen, encourage, forgive, and work for change. Anger's rarely the best policy, and we would do well to take care. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe. May the Lord bless you. Amen.